Meeting. Today is April the 8th, 2019, and we have 6 members present. Ms. Phelps is absent. We have a quorum. At this time, the agenda is before you, and at this time we'd like to entertain a motion to adopt the budget.
I move to adopt the agenda as presented.
Thank you. We have a motion by Ms.
second.
And a second by Mr. Blaine. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries 6-0 with 1 not present. Moving on to 3.01. Resolve that the board conduct a closed meeting for the following purposes: consideration of candidates for employment, assignment, promotion, demotion, and discipline of employees, or resignation of employees who have a contractual commitment to the board as permitted by 2.2-3711A1 of the Code of Virginia, and consideration of student disciplinary appeals as permitted by Section 2.2-3711A2 of the Code of Virginia. Do we have a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Moved by Dr. Meyer and seconded by Ms. Gramp. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries 6-0 with 1 not present. We are now in closed session. Good evening, everyone. We want to welcome you back to our regular school board meeting. I want to ask if you would take the opportunity now to either put your phone on silence or turn it off, so it will not be a disruption to the meeting. We welcome you here this evening for our school board meeting. It's going to be packed with action. I ask that you put your seatbelt on because there's a very special game that's coming on this evening, and we intend to make it there. With that being said, if the assembly would please stand as Ms. Shelley leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Shelley, thank you. We'll move on to, there's no public hearing this evening, so we'll move on to the consent agenda, 9.01 through 9.07. Dr. Martin.
On the consent agenda this evening are the minutes of the February 11th, 2019 regular meeting, the February 12th, 2019 presentation of the school board's budget to the Board of Supervisors, and the February 25th, 2019 workshop meeting. Donations, which are usual and customary, approval of Head Start baseline grant application, approval of the 2019-2020 holiday calendar for 12-month employees, approval of renewal number 1 and amendment of contract with Sodexo, approval of the facilities rental agreement by Spotswood Baptist Church for regular Sunday services at Nye River Middle School, and approval of consenting to the refinancing of various VPSA general obligation bonds. Staff asks that this consent agenda be approved as presented.
So moved, Mr. Chair. I will second.
The consent agenda is properly moved by Dr. Meyer and seconded by Mr. Blaine. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries 6-0 with 1 member not present. Item 10.01, 10.02 are informational items for your consideration. We'll move on to 11.01, Performing Arts Highlight, Freedom Middle School Women's and Men's Choir. Ms. Flenard.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Dr. Baker and Dr. Martin. Our performance this evening comes to us from select women's and men's choirs from Freedom Middle School, Belle Musique and Beau Giste. They are under the direction of Catherine Presserin. These groups are made up of students who wanted to go above and beyond their music education. They were selected for these choirs by audition, and they meet once a week after school, as well as during the school day during Tiger Time, and sometimes even during lunch. They will each be singing a piece that they recently performed for their all-district assessments. Bogiste is singing Aura Lee. Aura Lee is an American Civil War song, but you may recognize the melody from Elvis Presley's Love Me Tender. Belle Musique will be performing There Is Sweet Music Here. The text of this song is from a poem by British poet Alfred Lord Tennyson. Ms. Pressman.
Sing of
Well done.
Yeah, but I never drank it.
Good job.
Again, an excellent job by the Freedom Middle School Women and Men's Choir. Let's just give them another round of applause. As we continue our instructional highlights, we have Lee Hill Elementary Yoga and Coffee Cart. Ms. Flenard.
Thank you. Lee Hill Elementary has a supportive culture that embraces leadership for all students. This evening, we are here to hear about how students are utilizing yoga to decrease the impact of stress and toxins. And in honor of last month's Autism Awareness Month, we will get a glimpse of the unique learning opportunities several resource classes and team members are using to develop social and academic skills. It is our pleasure to have the proud principal of Lee Hill, Carol Ann Luter, and her Lions present this evening.
Good evening, Mr. Braswell, Dr. Baker, and members of the board. We are celebrating Lion Nation tonight in many facets, from the artwork that was displayed earlier, and we had coffee cart for our teachers of the year, as well as you all and those esteemed members that are here tonight. So it's not about me. I'm stepping aside for my kids to come up. We have Jenny McMichael, who is the leader of one of our resource classes. This is Autism Awareness Month, and we wanted to highlight what they do. She leading this idea with also our speech language pathologist, Rachel Short, and our children providing coffee every Friday. If you want coffee or tea, come on over to Lee Hill first thing in the morning on Friday. Then we're going to follow up with our social worker, Amy Cox-Gibbs, and our students leading you in a yoga session. Jenny?
Good evening, school board, Dr. Martin, Dr. Baker. I'm lucky to teach this wonderful group of students at Lee Hill Elementary. These guys are resilient, caring, amazing kids. They love school and are eager to learn new things. They also have autism or other disabilities requiring specialized instruction. Yes? Students with autism require frequent opportunities to practice skills in an engaging and meaningful environment to promote generalization. My classroom piloted a coffee cart to address several of the core deficits of autism, including social and communication skills. Students engage in interactions with school staff and peers and work together as a team to fulfill coffee orders and deliver them to teachers. They have worked to build the necessary communication skills to ask and answer questions, request help when needed, and build their vocabulary in a motivating and engaging activity. They also practice functional academic skills, including money, measurement, counting, oral and written communication, comprehension, and sequencing. Students work as a team to complete coffee orders and deliver them to teachers in the building. And teachers get coffee, woohoo! Hopefully you had a chance to see the data, because we love data, about the astounding growth these guys have made. The self-determination and independence this project has brought has a tremendous and invaluable impact. Of adults with disabilities, only 16.8% are employed, regardless of their great potential. It is important for us to be proactive, start early, and work with a sense of urgency in preparing our children to be college and career ready. I'll let the kids tell you more about Coffee Cart. Look, it says 1 Conrad, 2 Ben. Conrad, can you tell us about the steps we take to make the coffee?
First step is cream. Next step is sugar, and then
I had to use notes too. Let me get it.
and then coffee.
It's your turn.
Wait a minute, who was that?
Hey, Ben, do you want to talk? We'll be right back. guys.
Okay, next up is Amy Cox-Gibbs and our yoga ambassadors.
Good evening, Dr. Baker, Dr. Martin, esteemed members of the board. 2 years ago at Lee Hill, we started a program called Peaceful Pause for Lee Hill Lions who struggle with emotional regulation and as a result have behavioral outbursts in the classroom or have significant anxiety. We are now in our second year. The two wonderful young men in front of me are our ambassadors. We have 6 fifth grade students who have successfully completed yoga and now push in once a week to first grade classrooms and teach breathing, mindfulness, yoga, meditation to our young first graders who are struggling. My coworker here is Lynn McFadden. She's a certified yoga instructor, and we have been doing this group together, and she's going to lead you in a short session.
So we're going to start out just by taking some deep breaths. And I don't know, Kendrick, do you want to add some of the benefits of taking deep breaths? Use this. You can use that. When do I ask you to take deep breaths? When you first start until help you get calm. When we take a deep breath, where do we breathe? Through our nose and out the mouth. So do you want to leave? Why don't you face all the members of the school board? Huh? Okay, that's fine. So do you want to demonstrate how deeply we breathe? So we're going to breathe in through the nose. I'm going to invite all of you to breathe with Kendrick. In through the nose. Pause and exhale. Think you can lead us in 2 more of those deep breaths, Kendrick? And now I'm going to invite you just to close your eyes and take just a little mini break before you get on with your meeting. So if you are comfortable closing your eyes, and I invite everybody out here to close their eyes as well. And I want you for just a moment to feel your feet on the floor. Just be aware of your feet on the floor. And be aware of perhaps the contact you're making with your chair. Think a moment about the crown of your head. And with the next breath, let it lift up towards the ceiling. Go and take a deep breath in, sigh it out here. And I'd like everybody to inhale and bring their arms up above their head if they have room. And I'm going to fix all the screen neck and computer neck and desk injuries you have from your day. So I want you to take a moment and inhale and just as if someone's pulling your hands above your head, create space in your wrists, your elbows, your shoulders. And imagine this is 12 o'clock. As you exhale, slowly roll your shoulders back to like a 9 o'clock position. And then take your palms out and turn them towards the side of the room and let your arms come down. Beautiful. Now take a moment to notice how much more open your heart feels. Take another deep breath in, sigh it out. Notice how you have more room to breathe. Anything you boys would like to add? I think everybody feels good now. You want to do some neck warm-ups? Okay. Let's inhale, bring the top of our head up nice and tall. And we're going to work, in yoga we work with the rhythm of our breath. It's a moving meditation. So a lot of times the kids hear me saying inhaling and exhaling, and that's how we move. So we're going to inhale, bring the top of our head up. Exhale, drop your chin forward. Take 2 deep breaths here. Inhale the top of your head up. Exhale, drop your head back. Open your eyes and look at your own eyebrows. And with the speed of your own breath, you can look from side to side like you're trying to see your ears. Look down at your nose. I don't know, Kendrick, this is a really good time to do a lion's breath. Do you think we should do it? No? I don't know. Kendrick and I, what do you think? Sure. I think we should. We're the Lee Hill Lions, right? Yeah. So a lot of times, this is actually a lion's breath in yoga, but we've made it our school breath. So you're going to breathe in through your nose, and exhale, stick your tongue out as far as it'll go. As in great breath to do when? At the end of the day? To get rid of all your frustrations? And when you're tired? Okay. Excellent. You want to do the roller coaster breath? Okay. Do you want to explain it or do you want me to explain it? Okay. So Mason would like to demonstrate the roller coaster breath. Hold your hand out. I like to call this the take 5 or take 10 breath because you always have, this is a reminder, you have your hands with you everywhere you go. And you can use that as a cue to take a deep breath in to the top of your fingers and exhale down. Can you demonstrate? Up, guys. Breath in, sigh it out. Think we should teach them the bumblebee breath? No? Kendrick's going to say yes. I think you need to learn the bumblebee breath because the bumblebee breath is a great one. The lion breath is a little conspicuous. And I tell the kids you might not want to do that if you're someplace where you want to draw a lot of attention to yourself. The bumblebee breath is inconspicuous, right? And the bumblebee breath is a great one if you get overly stimulated or anxious when you hear a lot of noise. And a lot of times we talk about feeling that way in the bus or the cafeteria or different places like that, right? And all you do is take your fingers and gently push in on the cartilage of your ears. And I want you to take a deep breath through your nose and very quietly hum it out. You hear anything other than the humming? No. So it's a great way to create a little timeout space for yourself. And the kids, that's probably the most popular breath that they do. They come and tell me that they do it in the bus, in the cafeteria. No, you think? Okay, well, Mason likes the roller coaster breath. Yeah, I know. He does.
Thank you for letting us highlight a little bit of academics in a unique way with Coffee Cart, as well as working to help ourselves self-regulate. Have a great evening.
Thank you. Before we move on, I just want to say we appreciate our teachers that work with our students, those especially that work with children with intellectual disabilities. We are very thankful for the work that they do. You had an opportunity to see firsthand their professionalism, but also their compassion for the children and who they touch. So I just want to say thank you for all of our teachers, not those that are just here, but those that work with our children with special needs. It's no mistake to me why so many folks from other counties move to Spotsylvania County because they heard of a great gym that we have here with special education and the assistance that we provide students with intellectual disabilities. So again, I want to thank all of our teachers that are involved in that either directly or indirectly. Let's move on to visual arts recognition, Ms. Flannery.
Thank you. This month, we are displaying artwork in the school board office from 5 of our schools. And these schools are Lee Hill Elementary, Salem Elementary, Freedom Middle School, Thornburg Middle School, and Spotsylvania High School. We celebrated these student artists previously with a certificate of appreciation at a reception held in their honor prior to this meeting.
And then we'll move on to 12.02, 12.03, the All-State Choir, Band, and Orchestra recognitions, please.
Thank you. All state music students, congratulations to Spotsylvania County's All Virginia Choir, Band, and Orchestra students. These students were chosen at a very competitive audition involving students in District 15. If you could please come forward by school as I call your name. We have 2 schools in the area of band. We have Riverbend High School, Zane Darden, tenor sax 1 in concert band. Is Zane here this evening? And also for Massaponax High School, we have Trey Livesay, concert band clarinet, and we have TJ Davies, symphonic band trombone. In the area of orchestra, we have Riverbend High School, Abigail Leidy, cello, Anna Thompson, violin, and Cornelius Ellis, alternate viola. All 5 of our high schools are represented in chorus. We have Chancellor High School, Stephen Carter, bass 2, Kara Hayden, soprano 2, Elizabeth Whitehurst, alto 1. And thank you, Rhonda Miller, Director, for being with us this evening as well. And from Cortland High School, we have Jaden Brown, bass 1, Madison Baklavoff, first alternate soprano 2, and Joyce Ellis, first alternate alto 2. And thank you, Ms. Akers, Director, for being with us this evening. From Massaponax High School, we have Claire Jones, alto 2, Lauren West, alto 1, Bridger Johnston, first alternate, bass 1. Thank you, Ms. Flory, for being with us as well, Director, Massaponax. From Riverbend High School, we have Carolyn Wishard, alto 1. From Spotsylvania High School, we have Haley Amick, first alternate soprano 1, Madison Tuning, second alternate alto 2, and Jacob Christian, second alternate bass 1. And if we could have a moment for all of our families that support our wonderful students in their music achievements, if you could please stand to be recognized as well.
And now we're going to move on to the National Geographic GOB State Qualifier, Ms. Flinart. Just as a way of information, you may have noticed that we skipped 12.02. That's on purpose. We'll pick it up at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Meyer. If we could please have Matthew Earnhardt come forward at this time. Matthew is an 8th grader at Nye River Middle School and was the only Spotsylvania County student to qualify to participate in this year's state GOB. The National Geographic GOB includes 3 levels of competition: school, state, and national. Schools conduct a GOB and name a school champion. Next, the school champion takes a proctored online qualifying test, and the top 100 ranked students in each state qualify to represent their school at the state level GOB competition. The state GOB was held on March 29th at Longwood University. Congratulations, Matthew, on a job well done. And if Matthew has family here that supports his geography, if you could please stand to be recognized. Well done.
And now we have a special time to recognize our Teachers of the Year. Ms. Colbert.
To Mr. Chair, to the members of the board, to Dr. Baker, Dr. Martin, good evening. Each year, Spotsylvania County Public Schools participates in the Teacher of the Year program coordinated statewide through the Virginia Department of Education. All public and accredited non-public schools are able to participate in the Teacher of the Year program to honor teachers who represent the best in teaching in Spotsylvania County Public Schools, the Commonwealth of Virginia, and across the nation. For more than 40 years, Virginia has participated in the National Teacher of the Year program, a project of the Council of Chief State School Officers. The program is open to all pre-kindergarten through grade 12 teachers who possess a current renewable Virginia teaching license, including school librarians, school counselors, and reading specialists. The Office of Human Resources is pleased to have coordinated this process with our site principals, and from this group of nominees, the 2019 Division Teacher of the Year will be selected. This evening, we will recognize the Teacher of the Year nominees from each building. As your name is called, if you could also, after you received your recognition, please remain standing for a group photo. Representing Battlefield Middle School, third grade teacher, Sarah Beverly. Representing Berkeley Elementary, fifth grade teacher, Kim Spano. Art teacher at Brock Road Elementary, Rebecca Baring. Representing Cedar Forest Elementary, Mary Grace Bradley, special education teacher. Second grade teacher at Chancellor Elementary, Jessica Fisher. Of Courthouse Road Elementary, Kim Reganey Smith, first grade teacher. Representing Cortland Elementary School, Jillian Levis, special education teacher. Fifth grade teacher, Angela Chanko of Harrison Road Elementary. Representing Lee Hill Elementary, Jennifer Costo, first grade teacher. Librarian and media specialist, Kristen Boyd, representing Livingston Elementary. Of Parkside Elementary, Meadow Davis, kindergarten teacher. Representing Riverview Elementary, kindergarten teacher, Amy Moore. Kindergarten teacher at Robert E. Lee, Ashley Clark. Teacher of the Year of Salem Elementary School, art teacher, Jeannie Carr. Representing Smith Station Elementary, library media specialist, Amy Hope. Third grade teacher at Spotswood Elementary, Tracy Logan. Representing Wilderness Elementary, music teacher, Kathleen Pellegrin. Special education teacher at Battlefield Middle School, Melinda Knowlton. Representing Chancellor Middle School, special education teacher, Kimberly Armistead. Teacher of the Year for Freedom Middle School, English teacher, Michaela Godfrey. Representing Nye River Middle School, civics teacher, Sarah Townsend. Health and physical education teacher at Post Oak Middle School, Sheila McCullough. Representing Spotsylvania Middle School, World History teacher Ryan Longfellow. Teacher of the Year for Thornburg Middle School, Science teacher Risa Florup. Representing Chancellor High School, Library and Media Specialist Christy Jett Brown. English teacher at Cortland High School, Catherine Louboutin. Math teacher at Massaponax High School, Denise Glassford. Representing Riverbend High School, math teacher Sarah Kirsch. English teacher at Spotsylvania High School, Joe Velasco. Representing Spotsylvania Career and Technical Center, Automotive Service Technology teacher, Frank Eberhardt. Representing Rappahannock Juvenile Detention Center, a remediation teacher, Jill Luffy. And representing John J. Wright Cultural Center, special education teacher, Kiana Whitehead. Again, we'd like to take this opportunity to give one last round of applause for our distinguished Teachers of the Year for 2019.
Ready? Look this way. 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3. Need you right there. Ready? 1, 2, 3. One more. Just make sure. Okay.
And finally, for our recognition this evening, we want to recognize our Superintendent's Art Award, Ms. Flanard.
Thank you, Dr. Meyer. The April Superintendent's Award winner for Outstanding Visual Art goes to Josael Ventura Melgar. He's a fourth grader.
That's amazing. That is amazing.
Josael is a fourth grader at Smith Station Elementary School, and his artwork will hang in Dr. Baker's office this month. We would like to thank Josael and his art teacher, Chelsea Rogers, as they come forward to be recognized for their outstanding accomplishment.
Oh, she did, right? Okay. Because you kick in elementary, middle, and a high, so.
I know. We would like to purchase it.
I couldn't find it on the VSB website, the Northeast Region Bulletin anymore. It's maybe there, I just couldn't get it right now.
If Josael has any family in the audience, if you could please stand to be recognized.
I think 5 o'clock. If I see different, I'll text you.
Although this is not on the agenda, I want to take this opportunity to congratulate our superintendent for being designated as the Region 3 Superintendent of the Year. Let's give him a round of applause. He's modest like that, and we weren't going to let him off the hook that easy. We're going to move on to now 13.01, public comments. Dr. Martin.
Good evening. The public comment segment of our board meetings is a time to receive recommendations, suggestions, and concerns and comments from the general public. Each speaker is allotted 5 minutes, and we ask that they clearly state the name, address, and/or voting district for the board. A speaker may request additional time from the board should one's 5-minute allotment expire. We ask that you keep your comments focused on the issues and that all speakers maintain a level of decorum and mutual respect for one another. Mr. Chairman, we did not have any speakers to sign up this evening, so I just let you
No one signed up?
No, sir.
Okay, we have, lady, please come forward, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Amer. I vote in the Lee Hill District, and I also work at Lee Hill Elementary School. There are great things going on in Spotsylvania County Schools these days, and I was so happy when I read the agenda to see the reinstatement of the voluntary sick leave donation that you'll be considering later in the agenda. One thing is clear: when there is a crisis in your family, the last thing you want to worry about is money. And this will help to ease the pain of those who are experiencing trauma or medical emergencies in their family. I see from what was put on the agenda that there is no age limit for legal spouse. There is no age limit for parent. Yet there is an age limit put on for a child. It states here that a biological son or daughter who is under the age of 18. I don't know of any 18-year-old who would be able to take into account and treatment on their own, and therefore would need a parent to help them. What I am asking you consider is that you look at the IRS definition of what a child is. To them, a child is 19 years of age or younger, or in the case of a full-time student, they are 24 years of age or younger. And of course, there is no age limit of somebody who is permanently or totally disabled. So in order for as many people to take benefit of this act that we're going to be considering today, I would like you to consider to broaden what exactly is defined as a child. I think it's a wonderful thing that we're doing. I know that if it is accepted, I will be donating some of my sick leave to this wonderful benefit to our employees. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Will there be anyone else in the audience that would like to address the board? Will there be anyone else in the audience that would like to address the board? Seeing none, we will close public comments and we'll go to board member comments. We'll first start with Mr. Blaine, and then we will go with Dr. Meyer, and then Mr. Twigg, Ms. Gramp, and then Ms. Shelley in that order.
I was able to attend the Governor's School Board of Directors meeting, and one of the things that I'd like to just report to you is that we've had, I think, 177 students apply for acceptance from our division for the, I've forgotten right now, the 80 seats that we have. We're very well represented. And I might say, as I interacted a little bit with some of the folks in the governor's school field, I am more and more impressed what we're able to do, and I'm very pleased that we're so active in it.
Thank you, Mr. Blaine. Dr. Meyer.
I just want to say thank you to our students and our teachers for their recognition this evening, and we're looking forward to see who's going to be proclaimed Spotsylvania County's Teacher of the Year, which generally occurs in several weeks. So with that, congratulations to everyone and to our students for excellent job done. That piece of artwork is something else, really something else. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Meyer. Mr. Twig.
As I often say, I thoroughly enjoy the arts to its varied degrees, and we've showed some positive outcomes of all of those talents here tonight. That was a lot of fun listening to Freedom Middle, the chorus, and their beautiful song. The yoga instruction was, that 5 minutes was the most peaceful minutes I've ever spent sitting up here on the board. So that I'll have to keep that in mind for the future. And then special congratulations to all of our Teachers of the Year and to Dr. Baker for his accomplishments. So we have done a lot. We've gone a lot of places. Let's just keep going. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Twig. Ms. Gramp.
I would like to echo some of those thoughts and just congratulate our Teachers of the Year and Dr. Baker again. We're going to all say it and end up making you blush later. And I'm going to save the rest of my comments for this evening when we get to action items because 9:20 is quickly approaching.
Thank you, Ms. Gramp. The seatbelt is still on. Ms. Shelley.
Thank you. I as well want to just congratulate all of our awardees and our Teachers of the Year. It's always a wonderful night to be able to celebrate with our Teachers of the Year this evening because I know how hard they work. So I want to congratulate them and thank them all. I also want to mention the pinwheels that we have up here. I'm sure everyone has noticed, it's adding some color and they're very beautiful. And it is trying to get exactly, April is National Child Abuse Prevention Month. So every April we have our pinwheel gardens put up here on the around the dais so that we can remember and not forget about our children who are abused. And I also want to thank for whomever made these nice fans for us because every child does matter and that's why we're here. So I just want to say thank you for that.
Thank you, Ms. Shelley. I just have one brief comment. The preponderance of my comments I will speak to in action items, but I had an opportunity to attend the first briefing for the health savings accounts and the high deductible health insurance plan that we're rolling out to employees. And I would strongly encourage all employees to sit in one of those briefings. It is a different way to do health insurance, and it will benefit you greatly if the situation applies and it gives you an opportunity to weigh different courses of action to see which situation fits you and your family. And the amount of dollars that can be saved are thousands of dollars. And I don't say that loosely. You owe it to yourself to sit in one of those briefings and get all the facts and the particulars as it pertains to health savings plans and high deductible health insurance and see how it can benefit you individually and your family. The rollout that they provided was an excellent briefing, and I asked them to consider performing that briefing here so that it can be televised, so that all of our teachers would have an opportunity to take advantage of it. I've been an insurance man for 26 years, and when I first came in the insurance business, PPOs were the new product on the market, and everyone was apprehensive about PPO plans, and they were afraid of them because they were relatively new. And everyone wanted their old utilization plan that cost a lot of money and did not provide for them the opportunity to contain costs by managing the care. Well, PPOs are pretty commonplace now. In fact, they have grown somewhat obsolete. And health savings accounts are something that we need to consider as a way to contain costs and provide more flexibility for the employee, not only in terms of lower costs for the employee and the employer in the short run, but the employee gets to maintain the savings as their own, and that's forever. Unlike a flexible spending account where you have to, you have to spend it or lose it. A health savings account, you can hold those dollars for as long as you live. And you even have the opportunity to invest some of those dollars in the market if you're so desiring. I would strongly encourage folks to have an open mind and look at these health savings accounts. I remember riding down Route 1 and Route 301, and it always amazes me as you ride down Route 1 and Route 301 that you see these old hotels sitting on the side of the road. And when the interstate came, they became obsolete because they refused to move. And what I'm trying to say to our employees is you have to look at new opportunities when they show up. So you're not one of those old hotels on the side of the road. And I'm telling you, look at the briefing, consider it, look at how it could benefit you and your family, and then you make an informed decision based off the facts that have been presented. I know that there's a couple that are planned in the future. Ms. Gaines, what dates are they?
We do have one that's planned for tomorrow, April the 10th.
One tomorrow, April the 10th at Cortland High School, and then another one on May the 2nd, is that right, at Spotsylvania High School, right?
And it's this Wednesday.
It's this Wednesday, and it starts at 4:30, right? 4:30. Starts at 4:30. Put that on your calendar. Come on out and see this rollout. It was well done, and I think folks would benefit greatly by having an opportunity to see how it could be of benefit to them and their family. With that being said, that's all of my comments. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Baker for superintendent comments.
Thank you, Mr. Braswell. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, very briefly, just one update that to probably prepare you for a potential recommendation in May. Our steering committee of the strategic plan that is working to both evaluate our current plan as well as to build and revise our plan moving forward over the next 5 to 6 years has met 4 times, and those have been not only extremely well-attended meetings by over 60 members of our community, stakeholders from teachers to parents to leaders to business folks, and we have had a great opportunity to really dig deep into what we've accomplished and what we hope or desire to accomplish over the next 5 to 6 years. So we have 2 more meetings scheduled, and the hope is that on May the 13th, we may be able to present to the board the executive summary and the overall plan for you to review and potentially adopt so that we can get into the summertime and begin our planning efforts for the next school year with that plan, to do that in alignment with that plan. The other thing that I wanted to share, again, congratulations to all of our folks that were recognized this evening, our Teachers of the Year, and it's a real honor to be able to go out each and every day and see our students and our staff doing such high quality work. And what I'm particularly proud of is not just the quality of work that I see them do individually, but more and more the quality of work I see them do collectively, the collaborative culture that they are a part of that exemplifies our mission, and mainly the first word of our mission, which is together. I really see it in action more and more, so I thank our folks. And if you watched many of them in action this evening, you see the level of dedication that goes around the clock, not just from the school hours. There's really a continuum, rarely a beginning and an end to the work that our staff is doing each and every day. So I thank them for that. And then finally, I wanted to just remind the board that the Spotsylvania Education Foundation, where I serve as an advisor, they have planned a big fundraising event, the Foundation Race for Education, that will take place this Friday. It's called the Twilight Run, and it will be at the Dominion Raceway. The fun run, I believe, begins at 5 o'clock, and then the run for the rest of us is at 5:30, a 5K. And so encourage you to come out and be a part of that, whether you participate in the run or walk, but just to be a part of that school community spirit as we continue to support the foundation and its work in helping to create innovation and creativity in our classrooms, as well as supporting a range of other needs, including the upcoming Sage Banquet that will honor, again, our school division teachers of the year. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Baker. We're going to move on to 14.01, Board Committee Reports. Do we have any Board Committee Reports, anyone? Dr. Meyer and then Ms. Shelley. Anyone else? Okay, so Dr. Meyer and then Ms. Shelley.
Just a quick update, the calendar committee has met, and now that the governor has signed the bill, which allows for school year to start prior to Labor Day, a recommendation will be coming to this board for the calendar for 2021. And I know Ms. Phelps and I share duties on that calendar committee, and we've met and the recommendation is coming forward. Mr. Brown is shaking his head, yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Meyer. Ms. Shelley.
Thank you, Mr. Braswell. We did have a meeting of the Spotsylvania Education Foundation, and as Dr. Baker told us, there is the fun run, which will be Friday, and that was on my list, so thank you, Dr. Baker. But they're just the seed committee for seed grants and the Jerry Hill grant will be announced fairly soon for the winners of those as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shelley. Any other board? Ms. Graham.
The local finance committee met. We discussed the Head Start application and got another update or two. And we meet every quarter, so we will provide more next quarter.
Thank you, Ms. Graham. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to superintendent reports. Dr. Baker.
I have nothing further other than the action items that follow.
Thank you. We'll move on to 15.01, second reading approval of revisions to school board policy for the 5-year cyclical review. Says, as part of the school board's deliberation and thoughtful process to review the division's policies in a timely manner, there are 52 policies scheduled for review at this time. These policies are presented for second reading this evening. The administration's recommendation is that the school board approve for second reading the recommended actions for each of the policies and regulations as outlined on the 5-year policy review checklist and index manual as presented. Can we have a motion?
I will move the recommended action.
Moved by Mr. Blaine. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. Shelley. Any discussion?
I do want to just make a comment.
Go ahead, please.
My comment is just so the public doesn't think we're just jumping into this. We've had these policies and regulations for months to look over them, and if we had any concerns, we would have brought them forward. So I just want the public to know we're not just jumping into this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries 6-0 with one member not present. (15.02) Approval of the 2019-2020 Special Education annual plan. Ms. Richardson.
Good evening, Chairman Braswell, members of the board, Dr. Baker, and Dr. Martin. On an annual basis, the Office of Student Support Services prepares the annual plan application for Title VI-B funds for Sections 611 and 619. The initial presentation was made to the board last month. Our Special Education Advisory Committee was able to review and provide feedback on March 21st. So at this time, it is administration's recommendation that the board approve the 2019-2020 annual plan application for federal funding to support special education in Spotsylvania County Public Schools.
I would like to make the motion to approve the 1920 special education annual plan.
Good motion by Ms. Shelley to approve the 2019-2020 special education annual plan, and seconded by Mr. Twigg. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries 6-0, and one member is not present.
Thank you.
Award of cooperative contract for relocation of modular classroom. Oh, did I skip one? I'm sorry. I had to recalibrate my eyes. Approval of the 2019-2020 local plan for career and technical education. And Mr. Wolf, it isn't April 1st. I'm sorry.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Good
Please,
evening,
sir.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, Dr. Baker and Dr. Martin. At the March 11th meeting, I presented before the board an annually updated local plan for career and technical education. The plan describes program offerings and services provided to students and budgetary requirements of this program. It is the administration's recommendation that the school board approves the 2019-20 local plan for career and technical education as presented.
Thank you, sir. And we're going to have Mr. Blaine give him the opportunity to move.
I move the acceptance of this plan. I'm very impressed with what we do in CT&E, and it's been a privilege to work with that group.
We have a motion to award the cooperative, a motion to approve the 2019-2020 local plan for career and technical education by Mr. Blaine. And we have a second? Second by Ms. Gramp. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries 6-0 with one member absent. Now, 15.04. Award of cooperative contract for relocation of modular classrooms. I don't know why I was so fixated on that.
It's exciting. Good evening,
Please,
Chairman
ma'am.
Braswell, Dr. Baker, Dr. Martin, and school board members. Tonight I'm presenting the award recommendation for the modular classrooms. The school division has identified a cooperative procurement agreement between James Madison University and Vanguard Modular Building Systems for the relocation of one modular unit from Cortland High School to Spotsylvania Middle School. This unit forms 10 classroom facilities. Cooperative procurement is authorized under Spotsylvania County Schools policy as well as the Virginia Public Procurement Act. And staff recommends that the school board authorize administration to enter into award of this project with Vanguard Modular Building Systems for the relocation of modular classrooms project as presented.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Moved by Dr. Meyer to award the cooperative contract for relocation of the modular classroom. And we have a second by Ms. Shelley. Any discussion? Ms. Shelley, please.
Thank you. So what is involved in the moving of it, and then what about when it gets to Spotsy Middle? What do they have to do with the modular?
Basically, what Vanguard is providing is a complete tear down of the unit, including disassembling, transportation, and then setting that module back up on site at Spotsy Middle School. There are some pieces of this that, for example, the decking and stuff that another vendor will have to provide. But as far as the main service of dismantling and reconfiguring them, that is all up to Vanguard. I'm working with purchasing on getting some contracts in place for some services, vendors, contractors to be able to help us with some other projects. and hopefully we can get those in place to take care of the other pieces. But the main part is to be able to get them moved. We're kind of up against a deadline on getting one set moved from Cortland to be able to complete that project on time. So it's needed that we do it now.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I have one question.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we're taking one of the 10 from Cortland.
Yes, sir.
What's going to happen with the other modules at Cortland? Are they going to go back, or are they?
No, sir. We own them outright. We have. I've been in talks with Mr. Upco as well as Dr. Baker on locations and needs across the county where they're needed. I have another meeting this week with Jim Baleko and some other staff to make sure that we look at all of the needs at all the schools at elementary levels as well as middle and high school levels, to where we may need to provide some classroom areas. So those units will be divided up, and they will go to other schools as needed.
I just want to, state that those are some very beautiful modular classrooms. Excellent. In fact, I found from talking to some of the students, they actually preferred those than being inside the building. So I just want to say they're not the standard mobile classroom, if you will. Excellent classrooms.
We like to call them alternative learning.
Alternative what?
Learning.
Alternative learning modules. Okay.
We.
Okay.
Yes,
go ahead, please.
Thank you. I'm sorry. So the office modular,
Yes,
can
ma'am.
that be reconfigured to be classrooms
Yes,
if
ma'am.
necessary?
It is. One of the reasons we purchased those units and the design they are is because it gives you a lot of flexibility of how you set them up. Being that they're made up of individual pieces, you can kind of combine different pieces and make different configurations. The office area is no exception. That was designed with the intent that we could go back in, make changes on the inside, change it to classroom areas, resource rooms, special ed rooms, those sorts of things. And the one area we're looking at it probably will be 2 classrooms and a resource room. So yes, it can be, and that's what we're looking at doing. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries 6-0 with one absent, excuse me. 15.05, adoption of multiple textbooks. Ms. Cunningham and Lynch Johnson.
Good evening, Chairman Braswell, Dr. Baker, members of the school board, Dr. Martin. It is my pleasure this evening to introduce key staff members who contributed significantly to the textbook adoption process. I'd like to recognize those members at this time. Christine Lynch Johnson, our Assistant Director of Teaching and Learning. Valerie Davis, Teaching and Learning Program Assistant, please stand. Lori Gallup, Secondary English Liaison and Teaching and Learning Coach. Margaret Newman, Secondary Math Liaison and Instructional Coordinator. Erin Johnson, Elementary Science Liaison and ITRT. And Dawn Heffling, our Purchasing and Division Textbook Coordinator. In accordance with Spotsylvania County Public Schools policies, IIAA Textbook Selection and Adoption Policy, and IFD Curriculum Adoption, Spotsylvania County Public Schools reviewed and selected textbooks and instructional resources utilizing carryover funding. As part of the curriculum adoption process, materials were selected, given opportunity for input from staff, parents, and community members. The identified materials are aligned with needs based on data and to the Virginia Standards of Learning. As noted in your board packet, textbooks for the following areas are part of this adoption process: elementary science, books and kits, The materials and kits provide students with readily available hands-on learning materials. Professional training is also included to support the implementation, and teachers will have access to online videos to model the use of the resources in the hands-on kits. For secondary math, we selected textbooks for Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and Geometry. These texts are aligned with instructional needs, such as the integration of Desmos calculators and materials to support our English language learners. Students are provided digital access to the textbook, and each class will have a class set of the physical text. Teachers will have online access to on-demand tutorials and interactive webinar sessions. Secondary journalism. The journalism text provides teachers with updated resources that reflect the current practices of journalists in the 21st century. And then lastly, secondary environmental science. The environmental science textbook is an update to our current textbook that is in use. Updated resources are necessary due to a change in the course sequence due to a change in ESSA or federal requirements. The course was offered as an 11th grade elective and is now a 9th grade required course. Given this change, more students will take environmental science, and therefore additional textbooks are necessary. So at this time, it is administration's recommendation that the school board adopts and purchases instructional materials and textbooks for elementary science, secondary math, secondary journalism, as well as secondary environmental science using FY19 carryover funds. At this time, we welcome your comments and/or questions.
Thank you, Ms. Cunningham.
You're welcome.
And we need to have a motion.
I'll motion.
Okay, Mr. Twigg is moving that we approve the adoption of multiple textbooks. We have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Shelley. Any discussion?
Yes.
Go ahead, Mr. Twigg.
How much of this text at each of the three levels is electronic vice hardback?
Supported by online or digital resources, is that what you're asking?
That's part of what I'm asking. Plus, vice, how much of it is just a hardcore textbook of with environmental science or with a hardcore hard text math book?
For all of them, the students will have textbooks. With elementary science, they will also get kits. So every 2 classrooms will receive kits pertaining to particular content areas. The only area that does not have a digital resource or an online type of resource would be high school journalism.
Fine. And how much of this is add-on to existing text vice, just something new and different and replaced?
If I'm understanding your question right, when you said how much of this is add-on?
Yeah, let me
repeat your question one more time.
That's fine. You have 30 textbooks and you got 150 students over 5 classes. How much of this is going to add to the number 30 so that students can have either individual or less shared textbooks?
I think, Ms. Cunningham,
Right.
I think that the question is really just to, and I want to make sure for the whole board, this is a textbook adoption, which means a replacement of the
Right.
current text. So it's really starting with these new resources, and in some cases, they're in alignment with updated curriculum at the state or federal level. So it's not really an add-on to anything at this stage. It's purely a new
Updates.
adoption, so these are all new books that
Right.
So then are you replacing 30 for 30, or are you going to get 100 environmental science textbooks, and whereas you have 30 now in some cases, or do you know?
Well, environmental science numbers will increase because we're moving environmental science from 11th grade to 9th grade, so that more students will be accessing the environmental, more students will need those particular textbooks.
So students are not taking textbooks home, given any of your recommendation?
No, we are purchasing textbooks, absolutely.
Such
Right.
that every student's going to take a
Yes.
book home?
Yes, we are purchasing textbooks, so there are classroom sets, and as needed, those textbooks can go home.
Okay, whereas in those various subjects and levels, we're not doing that now? Or how much of that are we not doing? The direction of my question is, anything short of 100% individual textbooks, we're operating at a certain bar right now. Are we increasing or enhancing that bar to where more students can take more textbooks home?
Right, yes, because they will have digital access to resources as well as the textbook resources, if that's what you're asking.
I guess that's my answer.
Everyone will be able to access what they need in order to meet the requirements of the class or that homework assignment.
Then that being the case, how has your committee evaluated the internet issues in the deep country parts of our community, which is about 2/3 of it? Are those students being provided textbooks they can take home?
Yes, and that's one of the reasons why we are sticking with textbooks, because we do realize that everyone does not have the same level of internet access, and we want to make sure all kids have access to whatever resources, content, skills, activities, whatever is needed for them to meet the requirements of the class.
And with this purchase recommendation, are we enhancing that ability? Or are we maintaining status quo on the students being able to take textbooks home?
I think we are enhancing the ability because, number one, we're providing more access to the environmental science classroom. We're ensuring that we have textbooks for all students to be able to interact or access whatever course content that they need. And plus, we'll also have a digital piece that teachers will be able to use to provide kids with resources that they need.
And then you said something earlier that you didn't add there, and that is you're going to have a special consideration, subjectively speaking, for students that need textbooks to take home. Is
Yes.
that a true statement?
Yes.
Effective statement?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
I just want to make sure that the board realizes that in response to that last question, I don't want it to be misinterpreted that this is a sudden increase in access or an assurance that every child has what they need, whether it's in the classroom or going home. Nothing has changed in that respect. Now, if we're talking about raw numbers of actual textbooks, educationally, we, as well as probably the majority of the state, if not nation, have moved away from a traditional every child gets a book for every single class that is all their own and is not part of a class set. Now, if that is part of equity for students, we make sure if they don't have access to it at home, that they can have the hardbound or the print textbook. But I don't want it to be interpreted that, in response to Mr. Twig's question, that just in this case, are we assuring that students who don't have certain kinds of access are now going to have it? I think that's been a strong consideration the entire time I've been here as far as the selection of appropriate resources. And please keep in mind, too, that when you're adopting materials as a board, you are not adopting one singular resource. All of these resources are intended to work in concert to implement the entire curriculum.
And my response to that point is, I've heard too many instances over the last, I'll say, 2 years, where teachers and parents alike have stated that they haven't had enough access to textbooks. And so that's why I'm asking the question, are we tweaking that just a little bit in the positive direction? And she gave me some assurance that we are in these subjects. And if you can validate that,
I'm
then I
going
think
to
we're in
go
good
back.
shape.
I don't think, at least just I'm not assuming that Ms. Cunningham picked up that you were responding to over the last 2 years complaints that you'd received. So now that that has come to the surface, I want to again go back to anytime a teacher, you said a teacher or a parent or a child says they don't have access to something, they should be immediately directed to that school principal to make sure that they get what they need. Because if we are ever aware that a student is perceived to not have what they need, they will receive what they need. Now, the perception that they don't have access to a book because they are not given one individually that they take with them everywhere may be a perception, but that's not intended, in this case, Mr. Twig, to imply that they're not receiving the same access that all children receive. It's just, I think we still have folks who have, and understandably, a traditional mindset that, I expect to have a book for every class. And yet in some cases, especially since the recession, we found that that is not always the best impact or bang for the buck, so to speak, in terms of the purchase of curricular materials. Right, and we are sensitive to that and continue to be in those rural areas, and appreciate you continuing to look out for the students who are in the rural area.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Is there any other questions on that? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, the motion carries 6-0. Ms. Cunningham, thank you very much. I still believe that teaching and learning is the epicenter of everything that we do.
That's right.
Moving on to 15.06, approval of GCBDA-R1, voluntary sick leave donation regulation. Ms. Colbert.
Mr. Chair, to the members of the board, Dr. Baker, Dr. Martin, the Office of Human Resources drafted a school board regulation GCBDA-R1 pertaining to the voluntary sick leave donations. This recommendation is intended to provide economic relief to eligible employees who are likely to endure financial hardship during a prolonged absence due to a catastrophic illness or injury of an immediate family member. Currently, our employees are eligible to receive benefits under the short-term disability plan for their own needs. At this time, we ask that the board would take into consideration the recommendation that's before you.
Thank you, Ms.
The
Colbert.
recommended action.
We have a motion by Mr. Blaine for the approval of GCBDA-R1, voluntary sick leave donation regulation. We have a second.
Second.
Second by Ms. Shelley, properly moved and seconded. Do we have any questions? Mr. Twigg.
Can you respond to that lady's comment from earlier, please?
I think really it would be up to you all to determine if you'd like to make those adjustments accordingly.
How does it read?
It reads as she indicated, in terms of
Can
the
you
age
repeat-
limit.
Can you repeat it, please? Thank you.
It reads that a biological son or daughter who is under the age of 18 years old, the adopted child, foster child, stepchild, legal ward, or child of an employee standing in loco parentis. So it does have an age limit there.
Is qualified or is not qualified?
That would be the qualifying.
Thank you.
Yep.
And we have
The IRS's definition, which was, 19 or 24 and younger if they're a full-time student?
Or you could remove the age.
That's what I was wondering.
We don't want to get into a debate now. Hold on a second.
We're
Okay,
not
so
debating.
Ms. Gramp, you have the floor, and then I'm going to make your comments, and then we'll come back for an opportunity for
And it
rebuttal.
just states that you can use the sick leave for a sickness of an immediate family member, so any child of any age is what Ms. Shelby is referring to, and then we have that definition too. So I think the age limit is just up to us. So.
Yep.
Okay, Ms. Shelley.
Thank you, because in my notes, that paragraph I noted, because I had question mark, not an adult child. So, I mean, I know anybody in here who has an adult child, if they're ill, they may have a spouse to help them, they may not.
Right.
So that's why I was questioning it from the beginning. So I would like to remove the age from that regulation. Before we vote on it, I would like to remove the age for a child, just to have a child with all the children, stepchild, adoptive child, however that goes, all of that. And then I had another question. It was, I put number 3, number 5. So I guess section 3, and I got to find it again. Section 3, number 5, the 30-day elimination waiting period. I just was questioning, what is that?
That's consistent with our previous sick leave bank policy, and really essentially that means that there is a 30-day period of this catastrophic incident. So certainly the employee would have exhausted any of their leave, and then we would look at what the FMLA documentation indicates in terms of a time frame of when it began. So we could kind of count down to see if there were at least 30 days to help define that catastrophic component.
Okay, because my question is that as well, does it have to be consecutive? Because I'm thinking of, a friend of mine is going through a chemo right now, but it's not consecutive. It would be 2 days out, go back to work for 2 weeks, 2 more days out. So I was wondering if it has to be 30 consecutive days, because the catastrophic piece may not be necessarily consecutive.
But the illness is.
Yes.
Do you know what I'm saying? So the treatment component of it, if I'm following you, may not be consistent over the consecutive days, but the process for the treatment may cover that scope of time.
But
Does
I'm
that make
wondering,
sense?
so like, but if the spouse may have to take, say, Thursday and Friday off of work because the chemo is on Thursday and it's going to take Friday. But they're not going to, they're only going to take Thursday and Friday off every 2 weeks. They're not going to take 30 days off of work.
But that would also be captured with the FMLA documentation, because FMLA, they can have a consecutive request, or it could be intermittent. So we'd have to just look at it on a case-by-case with that.
Okay. And then my other question, when would this begin? Would it begin at the next school year? Would we start it after we approve it?
We can start it after you approve it if you all are in support of that.
Okay, and then can employees designate who receives those days?
We are not recommending that employees designate who receives the specific days. And we've gotten some consistent guidance that that's probably not a direction that we should move in.
Okay. I understand. I want to also say thank you for bringing this back, because this was my biggest concern, was our family members when we started, which I think is absolutely wonderful, our long and short-term leave. I think it's beautiful that we have that, but it doesn't include our family members. So I am so thrilled that this has come back to us as a board. So thank you to HR, and I'm sure finance had a lot to do with it as well. So thank you for bringing that to us.
Any other comments? I just want to caveat a couple things that Ms. Shelley mentioned. The days, because it's a health policy, is similar to a disability policy, is the reason why there's a 30-day elimination period. The elimination period is designed so that there's no malingering for the use of it, and we have to protect all of the people that are buying in. So it's designed to protect against malingering. And then the other part that you made mention about, it was, oh goodness gracious, it just slipped my mind. No, not the age of the child. The age of the child, there's no. Yeah, designation of beneficiaries. That broaches into discriminatory practices when people can determine who's going to receive benefits. The benefit is put in the pool and it's administered in a way that the donor, when they give that leave away, they release that. There's no constraints on how it should be administered by them. So, and to do otherwise would, there would be a lot of different violations, in my opinion, as it pertained to that. And we have Ms. Parrish here too. Am I talking out the left side of my neck?
Good evening, Mr. Chair.
Yes, certainly.
Dr. Baker. Dr. Martin, Yes, there's one other consideration that I wanted to point out, because I did review this with Mrs. Colbert. It's also to comply with IRS regulations. So if you look at whether or not something is taxable to the person donating it, typically, if you're giving someone a gift, you pay your own income taxes on your sick leave, for example, and then you donate it to person A. So in order for the IRS to approve these types of plans, they have essentially stated that you can't designate who gets them, because that would be like a gift that you have to pay taxes for. So this plan is specifically designed so that the person donating the sick leave does not have to be taxed on their income, and instead it goes into the income of the person accepting the leave.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Any other comments? Dr. Meyer?
Are we then stipulating that, as Mr. Blaine had motioned and a second by Ms. Shelley, that it would then, age of the child would be removed and it goes into effect when approved?
I'm going to ask that we amend. Is that fine with you, Mr. Blaine? So the friendly amendment that we remove age and that the effective date is immediately. We'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries.
Thank you.
Moving on to 15.07, approval of a high school redistricting option. Mr. Upperco.
Sometimes I feel like one of those old hotels on 301 here. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Dr. Baker, Dr. Martin, the High School Redistricting Committee developed two options in its objective to provide student capacity relief for Massaponax High School in light of current and future residential development in the school's attendance zone. The committee also examined the possibilities of redistricting some students to other high schools that currently have or will have in the near future space for additional students. The committee, comprised of stakeholders from each of the four potentially affected school communities, officially met twice, once on January 24th, 2019, and February the 5th was the second meeting, 2019. Members approved two options by consensus to bring to the school board for consideration. The options were presented to the school board, as you recall, at the February 25th, 2019 regular meeting. They were then placed on the school division's website for public access. Subsequently, per school board policy, public information meetings were held to solicit community input per the following schedule. On March the 14th, we met at Spotsylvania High School, March 18th at Chancellor High School, March 19th, Massaponax High School, March 20, Cortland High School. A list of previously asked questions was updated after each session and placed on the school division's webpage. A school board public hearing was conducted last Monday on April the 1st, in accordance again with school board policy to solicit public feedback. At this time, I'd like to review the high school redistricting process in a little bit greater detail to assist the school board in approving an option for high school redistricting. And yes, sir, I realize that there's a national championship game tonight. I also realize that this is a very important issue, and I'm sure if we're going to err, we'll err on the side of redundancy and maybe too much detail rather than not enough. So, there we go. Again, the high school redistricting objectives were to provide student capacity relief for Massaponax High School in light of the current and future residential development in the school's attendance zone. And number two, to examine the possibilities of redistricting some students to other high schools that currently have or will have space for additional student capacity. Previously identified study areas for initiating a redistricting effort from Mosley Architects planning the plan study phase 2 were utilized as starting points for the current redistricting analysis. Now, as you recall, Mosley Architects was hired initially to explore ways to maximize existing instructional spaces, particularly at Massaponax High School. And that effort actually started during the 2015-2016 school year. Phase 2 of the planning to plan study focused on specific remedies for Massaponax High School's growing enrollment. These were presented to the school board in October 2017 by the Mosley architect firm. And as a result, some tangible results occurred. Lockers at busy hallway intersections were eliminated to improve student travel flow. Other spaces at Massaponax were also identified for repurposing in order to capture additional capacity. These projects are contained in the current Capital Improvement Plan 2020-2024 and are to be completed in the near future, which we hope will be this summer. Mosley's enrollment projections indicated that increased future enrollment growth due to the new developments for Massaponax High School was evident. So, as you'll recall, last May 2018, the school board adopted revised policy JC, school attendance areas. In addition, you also approved revised regulation JC-R, student transfer regulations for considering approval of requests, again at your May meeting in 2018. The Building Utilization Committee, I want to talk a bit about that and how that evolved. At the September 9th, 2018 school board meeting earlier this school year, staff communicated a general process for developing high school redistricting options. A key component of that process was the establishment of the Building Utilization Committee, or BUC, and that was in conjunction with School Board Policy JC. Redistricting updates were presented to the board on October the 8th, 2018, and also on January 16th, 2019. The Building Utilization Committee was comprised of the Director of Finance, the Director of Transportation, and the Executive Director of Operations. The building, I'm just going to call it the BUC, reviews study areas that were identified by Mosley, as we already alluded to, in the Phase 2 study, and it added several additional possibilities for consideration. In order to solicit community and stakeholder input at that time, the BUC evolved into a larger high school redistricting committee. Membership of the expanded committee included the 4 high school principals whose schools might be potentially impacted by a redistricting change, 12 parents and community members, in addition to the internal BUC members that were previously referenced. The first meeting of the full high school redistricting committee was held, as we mentioned, on January the 24th at Massaponax High School's library. A follow-up meeting was held February the 5th at the same site, and at the conclusion of that meeting, 2 redistricting options were approved by consensus to bring to you, the school board, for possible adoption. At this point, I'd like to briefly review what those options look like. And again, forgive me, it may be slightly redundant, but due to the importance of what we're talking about, I'd rather be redundant than not cover something adequately. You can see here an overview of the high school redistricting, the high school boundaries as they currently are. This next slide is from the 2020-2024 CIP. It shows both past enrollments at all the high schools, and it shows, if you look at 2018-2019, the current enrollment as of October the 1st of this school year, and then it projects 5 years into the future. The current, the enrollment as of October the 1st, as you can see, was over 2,000. It was 2017. And when you think about it, the design capacity for Massaponax High School is 1,830. However, I must again ask you to remember that last spring we held a block-by-block analysis that showed block by block that not all those students are in the school at any one time. And this is due to the fact that these students travel to other locations during the school day, either for Commonwealth Governor's School for a portion of the day, career and technical education, and others as well. So let's take a real quick review at option number 1. The first piece of option number 1, the first study area, would take students from Massaponax High School to Spotsylvania High School. This was a relatively minor one in terms of the number of students it would affect, and primarily consists of the roads that intersect Mud Tavern Road. The second study area was the Massaponax Church intersection of Hickory Ridge Road and Massaponax Church Road up to Route 208. This year's students affected, if we had done it earlier, would have been about 20. And again, those students would go from Massaponax High School to Spotsylvania High School. The largest component of option 1 would be the redistricting of the current Lees Park subdivision, and that would be all of Lees Park subdivision from the Massaponax High School attendance zone to the Cortland attendance zone. That would incorporate about 275 students. And remember, of course, that the fully renovated Cortland High School will have 300 additional seats. The courthouse area was also examined. There are a number of neighborhoods in that area. Altogether, we would consider moving about 113 students from Cortland High School to Spotsylvania High School. And a real quick analysis of those neighborhoods, Fremont Lane and Meeting Street, that's on the right as you're traveling south towards the courthouse on Route 208. You can see that. Across the street directly from that neighborhood is Brenda Way. And you can see that that's on the left-hand side as you're going out south towards the courthouse. And that would involve a relatively small number of students at this time, who again would go from Cortland High School to Spotsylvania High School. The Courthouse Commons Boulevard area, this is an area that is still growing. It's new development. It has not been built out by any stretch of the imagination at this time. And again, while it would only affect about 10 students had we done it earlier this year, it would be projected to incorporate more students as that gets more built out. Those students, again, go from Cortland to Spotsylvania High School. And finally, Plantation Forest Drive and Wild Turkey Drive, those neighborhoods are well established. Those students used to go to Spotsylvania High School, and they would go now from Cortland to Spotsylvania, and it would be almost 100 students. It would be about 95 students if we were to have done this year. I say if we were to have done it this year because I'm using real numbers from this year, and of course in the future your numbers are going to change a little bit, so I just want to make that clear that this is based on the current school year numbers. So as we review the redistricting impacts on schools, probably this is a better slide to look at, you can see that the total number of students affected would be about 410, that Cortland would receive an additional 158 students. Massaponax would see a decline of almost 300 students, and Spotsylvania would receive almost 140 additional students based on option 1. That is option 1. That would provide relief for Massaponax for about 2 to 3 years. The benefit of it is it doesn't affect as many students. Now I'd like to take a look at option number 2. I kind of joked before and I said, well, option number 2 is sort of like a supersized option number 1, meaning that everything in option 1 is also included in option 2 and then some. So these students would go from Massaponax High School to Cortland High School. And if we look at the neighborhoods involved, you're talking about Breezewood, Stony Creek, and the South Point area. And you have a total of about 161 students at this time. And finally, the second neighborhood that would be added as part of option number 2 is the area on Levels Road that is right next to Battlefield Middle School. Those students are currently Cortland students. They would be redistricted to Chancellor High School. This year there's a total of about 61. I want to make it clear that this is specifically Windsor Drive and Loriella Park Drive and the streets that intersect those. I've received a number of calls about some parents on the other side of Levels Road. This is an area right next to Battlefield Middle School. And the impact, and again I'll go to the second slide here because I think it shows us more. The total number of students affected by adopting option number 2 would be 632. This provides us with a longer-range relief for Massaponax High School's capacity situation. This would carry us 4 or 5 years into the future, we believe. As you can see, Cortland would pick up 61 more students. I'm sorry, Chancellor would pick up 61 more students. I think I just gave Jackie a heart attack. Cortland would pick up 258 more students. Massaponax would see 458 less students, and Spotsylvania would still have about 140 additional students. So just for a minute, I'd like to touch on the process that we followed and the timeline that we followed. As you recall, on February the 25th, the high school redistricting options were presented to you, the school board, at that time at your regular meeting. On March the 6th, information sessions and public hearing dates, times, and locations were posted on the division calendar and at all school website calendars. The following day, March 7th, the high school redistricting information was posted to the division website homepage under the SCPS News and Highlights section. The information posted were the dates, times, and locations for each of the information sessions. The PowerPoint presentation that was provided at the February 25 school board meeting, and the date of the public hearing, which was April 1st. On March the 8th, Massaponax High School sent out an auto dollar regarding the March 19th, 2019 high school redistricting information session that was going to be held at their school. On March the 12th, the winter edition of Impact, the school division newsletter, was sent to all parents and staff via email. Information regarding the redistricting information sessions and public hearings was included in this edition. The newsletter was also posted on a division website and on a staff dashboard. The same day, the Freelance Star newspaper ran Spotsylvania to hold information sessions about high school redistricting article. Additionally, it was posted on their Facebook page and Fredericksburg.com website. On March the 14th, all SCPS parents directly emailed reminder of the dates, times, and locations for each of the high school redistricting information sessions. Also on that date, the high school redistricting public information session number 1 was held at Spotsylvania High School with approximately 12 or 13 attendees. On March 18, and it's not listed on here for some reason, but the second high school redistricting public information session was actually held at Chancellor High School, and approximately 15 attendees were present at that meeting. The following date, we held high school redistricting public information session number 3 at Massaponax High School. There were at least 75 attendees at that particular meeting. And the notice of the April 1st redistricting public hearing was posted in the Freelance Star newspaper the same day, building bulletin boards in the main lobby and on the SCPS website. On March 20, we held our final high school redistricting public information session that was held at Cortland High School, and approximately 50 attendees were there. The Freelance Star newspaper ran an article entitled "Spotsylvania Parents Have Many Questions About High School Redistricting." Unfortunately, it had a really sexy guy on the front, and I keep on getting calls about that. That's why I had to get new glasses and shave. I didn't want anybody to recognize me. Anyway, additionally, that was posted on their Facebook page and Fredericksburg.com website. March 26, all questions asked at the information sessions and their answers were posted on a division website under the SCPS News and Highlights High School Redistricting Information page. And as you recall, the public hearing was held last Monday, right here, and I believe 28 individuals spoke at that time. So the next steps for you to consider as a school board: does the board want to revise the scope and timeline of the options presented? Our committee has operated from the outset with the assumption that implementation of the selected option would be for the outset of the upcoming school year. Just a reminder that student transfer regulation JC-R currently permits seniors to remain in their previous high school attended if their parents can provide transportation for them. And finally, the committee initially recommended that after an initial high school redistricting plan was enacted, it would be beneficial for the division to engage in a comprehensive K-12 boundary study with a third-party vendor to address intermediate and long-term capacity issues. That was primarily geared towards the elementary and middle school who are directly going to be affected or currently are being affected by development in their areas. And those would be Robert E. Lee, Parkside Elementary Schools, Spotsylvania Middle School in particular. And that is based on where the development is taking place. Be happy to entertain any questions at this time.
Thank you, Handsome. We're going to start with, well, before we do that, we
Motion.
need to have a motion.
I will make a motion to approve the redistricting plan.
Motion approved, the approval of which option?
Option 2.
Right. Moving, Ms. Shelley is moving to approve option 2 of the high school redistricting options plan. And a second?
Yep, I'd like that.
Go ahead.
Since we're talking about a motion, I would like to make sure that we include some contingencies that I think should be included in the motion. So if I can rephrase something, that it be option 2, which already includes option 1, based on what's been presented this evening, with the understanding that juniors and seniors would be grandfathered, that special education students with exceptional needs can remain at their school as determined through the IEP process, and that current student sibling transfer waiver form remain in effect and be incorporated into the student transfer regulation in order to address the concerns of rising freshmen attending the same school as other sibling. I'm referencing that student sibling transfer waiver form, tongue twister, because it's on the waiver form on the website, but that specific language was not incorporated into the regulation, and it needs to be in order to be consistent. I think it was just an oversight that as I was reviewing the regulation and the policy and then went back to check the form, I discovered the discrepancy. That's why I'm including that and seconding for the motion.
Could I clarify, in what you read, Dr. Meyer, when you mentioned the transportation for the junior and seniors and the transportation for the siblings, what is your transportation request for the special needs students?
The transportation for special ed students is already incorporated into the IEP. Okay. So if,
Just
wherever
clarifying
they're
that for your motion.
It's already in the IEP.
Okay, so we have, the motion is being given by Ms. Shelley. Ms. Shelley, do you accept everything that Dr. Meyer was mentioning?
I am. I made the motion so that we could have discussion because I have a lot of thoughts. So I made the motion so we can get down to business.
Okay, well, we need a
yeah,
motion on the
so,
floor to discuss. So we're going to have Dr. Meyer. Dr. Meyer is offering that as the motion.
Yes.
And to approve option 2 with a mitigation package that includes extending the grandfathering for juniors and seniors by ensuring that all special needs students are accommodated according to their IEP. And help me on the third one. You said the legacy piece where siblings, if a sibling starts as a freshman, they have a brother that's a senior, that sibling would have the opportunity to continue. That's what you're you're saying. So I call that a legacy. So those were the three mitigating pieces that were added to your original motion of option 2.
Do
So
you
do
want
we
to actually read what the current criteria would be for special assignment of a sibling?
beg your pardon? Say that again.
Would you like me to read what we currently have for special assignment of a sibling?
Yeah, go ahead
As
and
a
do that,
criteria?
but we want to
I might
make
add
sure
some-
that that's
Some clarity. A request for a sibling to attend a specific school because the school division has assigned a brother or sister to that school, assignment because of program availability or other purposes not due to their approval of a parent-initiated student transfer request will be considered, but there is no obligation to grant such a request. We have routinely, quite frankly, granted those requests up to this point.
What this motion is going to say, with this motion, this mitigation that is being added, that language would have to change because it's not going to be conditional. It's going to be, if we set up a legacy, then it's going to be a legacy. So if a person has an older sibling that's in, let's say is a senior, and they have a younger sibling that comes in as a freshman, that freshman is going to have an opportunity, even once that person graduates, to continue at that school of their.
That's different.
So long as they provide their own
Yeah, so that's
transportation.
different than what we currently do now.
That's
It
right.
would be, okay.
Right. So we have a motion on the floor by Dr. Meyer. Do we have a second?
I'm withdrawing my motion and using it.
Okay. So we have a second by Ms. Graham. So properly moved and Okay. So we have a motion on the floor, and I'm going to, do you want to offer a friendly amendment at this time?
I would like to.
Okay, go ahead. No, go ahead, and I'm going to come back to Mr. Twig.
The only two amendments I wanted to offer was to defer the start date of the motion officially until 2020, when the comprehensive plan is back for K through 8, so that we change all of the county at the same time for bus routes and those sort of things. I did want to stipulate that for 2019, any student that will be affected by the 2020 change, so freshmen or sophomores who are going to have to attend a different school in 2020, if in 2019 they have transportation and they want to attend the new school so that they can go to the school that they're going to go to for all 4 years, they can do that. So for 2019, any student that's involved in the 632 students that are involved in this, if you are an underclassman and you want to move to the new school a year early, provided you have transportation, your transfer will be processed. Transportation for the official change would start in 2020.
So if you're a rising freshman, let's say you live in one of the neighborhoods that you know is going to be moving in the next year, that you would have the opportunity to transfer, but you would have to provide transportation.
Correct. If you lived in Lees Park and you are slated to go to Massaponax for 2019, but for 2020, you are slated to go to Cortland, according to this plan that is going to be approved, and you provide transportation, you can instead start as a freshman at Cortland, and we will approve that transfer so you have the ability to do all 4 years in the same school. Or if you want to stay at Ponex and you're a sophomore in 2019, in 2020, when the official start time is, then you are a junior and you're exempt anyway. So therefore, less students are required to move school within their 4 years.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor by Dr. Meyer. It was properly seconded by Ms. Graham. but she has a friendly amendment. So, yeah, so Dr. Meyer, the floor is yours.
I'm having difficulty following the sequencing, and I'm trying to think how Ms. Dropico is going to administer that, to keep track of who's on first and who's on second. I'm going to reject the friendly amendment, because I think administratively, it's going to be a nightmare to follow. I'm having difficulty following and knowing who's on first and who's on second. And for that reason, because I'm having difficulty with it, someone else may not, but I'm going to reject that amendment.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor for option 2 that's been seconded by Ms. Gramp. The friendly amendment has been rejected. We're going to have discussion now, and the way we're going to do this is every person's going to have an opportunity to speak, and then we will have an opportunity for rebuttal. We'll start with Mr. Twigg, and then we'll go to Ms. Shelley, Ms. Gramp, Dr. Meyer, and then Mr. Blaine, and then myself. Mr. Twigg.
I reserve the right for a closing statement. In the meantime, I've got several questions. What's the percentage capacity of each school, each of the 3 or 4 involved schools, percentage capacity after each of option 1 and 2?
If we go back to the...
No, it's not.
Well, it's
Just
in
let him
one of
answer.
the slides on option 2, which I skipped over pretty quickly because it wasn't as clear as the other one, I didn't think. But let's see if I can show it real quick.
You gave us numbers. I'm talking about percentage. When Massaponax is cleared for option 1 and for option 2, are they at 106% from 125, or are they at 68% after they lose 200 or 400 students? That's the gist of my question.
What I can show you is based on this year only.
That's fine. Show.
You know what I mean? And that's what I'm talking about on the...
And you just want to bring up the slide, I'll do the math for you,
Slide here.
Mr. Upperco, so that it doesn't take too much time. He can't do that math for percentage.
Well, he's got a whole staff back there. I'd like to get some answers.
We're going to, I want to make sure everybody's going to have an opportunity to speak. Let's let Mr. Twigg finish his questioning, and then we'll move down the line.
And while that's being chased, how many ninth graders do we have coming in this year and projected next year if you have that number accessible?
What I have for rising grades, I have, based on option 2, all the students that would theoretically be coming from Massaponax to Cortland.
Ninth grade.
I have those not broken into ninth grade, but I have them broken into 9th and 10th grade. So, for example, next year, from all the neighborhoods that would currently Massaponax high schools that would be going to Cortland, we have a total altogether 9 through 12 of 440 students. That would be 237 9th and 10th graders together, 107 rising juniors, and 96 rising seniors. I'm assuming that the rising seniors are pretty much going to be a wash with the outgoing seniors from those neighborhoods. Well, I don't have the specific figures for that.
Well, is our Massaponax representative from the school here? Can you tell me if 237 is a high number or a low number for 9th and 10th graders?
Well,
coming
that's
in?
only from those neighborhoods, so that's not your overall grade, you know what I'm saying? For example, if you look at the October 1 count by grade, by school, you're going to see a whole lot more than those numbers in 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade, because these are only selected neighborhoods out of the whole. Is that what you're...
No, I don't care about the neighborhoods. I want to know how many rising 9th graders we have. Is the number a surplus, or is it 16% less than the average? In other
I'd
words,
have to look at the projections for...
nobody in here can
They're
tell
in the
us
well,
over
they're
the
in
next
CIP,
10 minutes,
actually.
Scott? Dr. Baker?
Let's stay.
In the CIP.
Let's move on to the next question while that's being
Baker
looked
cannot
at.
answer that question right now. and neither can
No, but it
Mr.
is in the
Uppercut.
CIP. If you look on the projected enrollment for next year by grade level, by
But the question
school,
is
it
it
in-
high or is it low? So that's
don't-
my question.
He's saying he doesn't
I
know,
don't
he doesn't
recall.
know the
I don't
answer
have
right
it in
now.
front of me.
So let's move on to the next question, please.
All right. Okay, still waiting on that percentage information.
Mine's is 88%, Cortland's 92%, Spotsy is...
For which option?
For two.
Option 2, fine.
Spotsy's 80%.
That's all that matters. Okay. And then on March 7th was the first time you went to the parents with the email. I saw that on the chart as you're validating that. And we did other things pretty well in leading up to that point because, first of all, anybody who paid attention in this county knew that there was a big construction project going on. And we provided some due diligence in the construction part and in your effort, which I applaud. But it's unimaginable that only 4 weeks ago, the parents got their first email, the parents throughout this county, regarding this massive change. And that's for the 80% who don't pay attention or haven't noticed the construction project, it meant a lot to them. And we heard from a lot of those people. So that's frustrating from the beginning that we've had only a month.
I'll tell you,
Yes, sir.
indirectly, this issue has been discussed the whole school year, including presentations before the board back in September, October, January. So
right, and that
I was
speaks to the
thinking
due
a parent
diligence
would
on your
probably have
part.
had the opportunity to see that something was coming down the pike,
Well-
and in certain circumstances, pretty specifically what that process was going to look like.
Well, did your committee discuss when strategically to notify every parent in the community? Was that
Well,
part of it?
Our
The plan?
intention was to do what we did, which was to notify them as soon as we had something together that we could present to you. We had to present it to you first, the two options, and that was done September 25. You know, this process, to get real numbers, you're really not able to do that until you start formulating the CIP and get that October 1 count. That's your official count.
Sure,
So
I
it takes that
understand.
much time to get a specific, you might have ideas about what you have, but to get an exact count, it usually takes October 1 count, usually not determined until the following week after October 1.
Sure.
In some cases too. So, you know, it takes a little bit of lead time there to get the information because you got to start, you know, you got to have a good baseline that's a real number to proceed with.
Mm-hmm. Well, but that's still 4 months before March 7th. Okay, just want to make that point clear to everybody who's listening. Also, correction on Spotsy High's attendance. There were 2 citizens there. I call it 1.5 because I spoke to both of them. And one of them was a citizen deep in the bowels of Livingston District who was just there to wondering what was going on. So this person wasn't affected. The other parent brought their child and were at that particular meeting. So there were 1.5 to 2 citizens at that particular meeting, just for clarification. Also, whatever we end up doing here, we have to put all this in writing before we vote on it.
It's going to be recorded, Mr. Twig, and just like anything that we vote for, it's recorded. And so I'm very confident, as I restated the motion, that it will be accomplished in the way we say it is.
That's fine.
So, I mean, you're just going to have to take my word for that.
Next is the special needs community. That's a very broad statement. Everybody's talking about IEPs. What about the 504 parents? What about anybody else on the extenuating scale? What about REACH? Well, sorry, I reached too far.
when we're
But we
talking
need to
about
craftily define what special needs is so we don't miss 3 types of students or 3 parents at each school and have everybody be upset about that and have another big fire to put out. So can you respond to that, please?
I think, and I don't want to speak for Dr. Meyer, but I think what he was referring to are those special needs programs that are offered only at limited locations. Certain programs are offered at certain schools. Typically, the high schools offer, their programs across the board, but not always. And if a student with severe needs has developed a relationship with the teachers at a particular school, I think it would be difficult to justify moving that student under those circumstances. 504s typically aren't usually as serious a situation as that, not always.
I understand.
And they are temporary in the sense that they have to be reapplied for every year. When 504s first got started back in the day when I was high school principal, which is forever ago, but they typically dealt with more physical situations than IEP type situations. For example, a kid broke a leg. How do you make accommodations to ensure that that student is able to maneuver through the hallways? Do you let him out early from class so he doesn't get jostled? Things of that nature. Now, things have evolved since that time, and it's been 20 years since I was a high school principal, so that's why I felt like an old hotel sometimes. But, but 504s typically can be met easier usually than an IEP for a specific handicapping condition that's very severe.
The point then being, I understand that, and I appreciate your explanation, that we're not going to include those 504 students in any uproot and move. Is that does that become a fair statement based on what you just said?
I just want to, if I might intercede here, I'm not sure what exactly we're talking about right now. So I want to go back to, I believe that the motion had to do with if there is something that within a child's IEP, individualized education plan, and I would understand that for any student with a disability, whether it's a 504 or an IEP. I think that Dr. Meyer's motion was referencing IEP particularly, but a 504 plan is also an individualized education plan. It's just called a 504 plan.
Just wanted to clarify that for the record.
If I might finish, though, I just want to make sure I'm answering your question. We will make sure that any student's needs are met according to that plan. And if they need to be met in a specific location according to that plan, then that will be accommodated. But that would be the case all the time, not just in this particular case.
That's all the questions I have. I'd like to make a statement.
Can I just get back to you for a second? Thanks to Mrs. Gaines who gave me the CIP. I can answer your question. Our actual ninth grade enrollment on October 1 this school year was 2025. Our projected enrollment for next year, October 1, is 1992. So it's a little less, actually, next year we project.
And that's projected Massaponax, sir?
I'm sorry.
Total enrollment
Total
of ninth
grade.
graders, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, so it was, I believe, Ms. Gramp, Ms. Shelley, you're next, and then Ms. Gramp.
Thank you. I just had some concerns from September, October, when we heard about the plan for redistricting anyway, for it starting in August. And I know a lot of people came out to say that. This is not why I'm saying it. I was my concern back then, because I even think I remember saying here, when would we start? And it was said next school year. I probably didn't say anything, but I'm thinking, wow, that's not giving people a lot of time. So that's my concern, is just the support of our students and their parents. Just kind of, they're not getting a lot of time to get ready for this. And then looking at the numbers, the percentages, Chancellor's going to be at 97% with this move. My concern is, and I know if we're going to do a whole division-wide redistricting later, then we'd have to be looking at these numbers and possibly a new school. But moving the students to Chancellor, it's only 61 students, and I know that only, but that brings Chancellor to 97%. My concern with Chancellor is that the cafeteria is small, And they are going to be building, well, if it gets approved, things usually get approved, but another apartment complex on Harrison Road. And Harrison Road goes to Chancellor. So that's my concern for the Chancellor move. Cortland will be at 92%. And as those people stated last week, there's going to be a lot more building in Lee's Park. So we can't have them at Massaponax. I'm not saying that they need to stay there, because Massaponax, as people have been complaining for a while, that we have had some overcrowding issues at Massaponax. And I know what we say, that the block by block is not over capacity, which is a very good thing. But the actual number is big. But the fact that Cortland would be moving to 92% with this move it's still high. And then I'm looking at, like I said, with Lee's Park. Massaponax would then be down to 88%, which is a great number, because we know they are building more and more on Route 1. So that number is going to go up quickly, because I have looked at the county's numbers of houses and multi-unit and single-family homes, and every year it's going up and exponentially in my perspective. So I know we have to do this. I absolutely know we need to do this. My main concern is doing it this coming school year. That is my biggest concern, is I'm just thinking that these kids have already gotten their schedule, or not gotten their schedules, but have gone through orientations, have registered for their classes, chosen their classes. So that's my concern for them. Not that we're rushing into anything, because we have not. We are not rushing into anything. We have been working on this for a number of years, and I do not want to say that. It's just that we're not giving a lot of notice to the families. That is my concern. And with that, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shelley. Ms. Graham?
As my friendly amendment stated, I just wanted to make it a little clearer, in case someone wasn't understanding it, just because I won't support it without it. I agree with Ms. Shelley that didn't give families a lot of time, and with the option that I presented, it allows students to not have to change high school within 4 years. They can, wherever they start is where they can finish if transportation's there. And that, as we know, high school is important, and I just think it'd be more seamless and in the best interest of the child if we allow, it's just 632 kids that are affected in Plan B out of all those high schools that may or may not, probably a half of them are juniors and seniors, so they already have an exception that they could use to not have to change schools. If we're going to let siblings apply for an exception, and any special needs kids with the IEP, which we would consider anyway, there's a small, most likely, I'm just throwing numbers out, even if there's a quarter of that that's left that doesn't fall into those categories, we're basically discriminating against those children, because they don't have any exception because they don't have a sibling or they don't have an IEP. So we're not going to entertain that. We're going to force them to change where we wouldn't force the other children. So I just think if we're going to allow some exceptions, that we should just let, for 2019, if you are affected by this plan that we are approving to start in 2020, and you are wanting to go to the school that you are going to go to in 2020, we allow them to go a year early. And the only students that wouldn't get that option, or if they can't provide transportation, which in the neighborhoods and even like the road in the communities that are close together, I've been contacted by numerous people in my area that said that they'll arrange carpools and that they would make it so that they could make this work if they are given notice and as a community, if their transfers will apply. Obviously, all of these exceptions that we have stated, we have to make sure that everybody gets their paperwork in.
Can't wait.
Sooner than later. And no matter which exceptions we go with, we have to make sure that they fill out their paperwork and get it applied so we can get master schedules done. I wanted to make some comments, though, because I haven't commented on this whole process yet. And I just want to reiterate, as the PowerPoint presentation showed, that we have been in this process for many, many years. There were lots of comments that we were taking this too fast, and it's been years that we've been going through the steps. So this final step that might have impacted people, as you showed, we put out lots of notice, but they might not have heard. I still got an email tonight that they heard we were voting on this and they hadn't heard of it. So that we can't inform everybody individually. So I think that there was ample notice of the hearings. I also want to point out, to address some people's concerns, that not all classes are offered the same at each school, that resources follow students. So if you're at a underpopulated school, there's not as many resources there. There's just not as many teachers. So if we can get more students to that school, then there'll be more resources, because resources tend to follow students. So redistricting actually helps bring more equity to our schools. So I want everyone to remember that. And then there were concerns about the master schedule. It's not done usually until the summer anyway. So as far as the timeline that this is on, the master schedule isn't ultimately a problem. I also want to say that after, I can't, as I said at the beginning, I can't support the motion as it currently is. I'll only support it if we can look out for those other students, because my district has many of those students. Just they happen to not be, I don't have a lot of juniors and seniors affected on those big areas. I have a lot of freshmen and sophomores, so I'm trying to look out for their families. And, but when that's done, I would like to make a motion that addresses the RFP, some guidelines, or just a discussion, but motion so we can have a discussion on the RFP for the next year's, some guidelines, some dates, and that addresses Ms. Shelley's concern. So I just want to
Ms.
put that
Wimp,
out there.
I think that would be appropriate in new business.
Yes.
Okay, so we have Mr. Blaine and then Dr. Meyer. Thank you. Okay, Dr. Meyer, you're going first.
First of all, I want to thank all the parents and students who attended the informational forums and who participated in the public hearing process with their questions. I attended two of the informational forums, the one for Spotsylvania High School with Mr. Twigg and the other at Chancellor High School. The students, exemplified their pride in their schools at Cortland and Massaponax and shared their concerns. The students of Massaponax are very proud of their school and should be, as I'm sure that students from Cortland, Chancellor, and Spotsylvania are equally as proud, and rightfully should be, and would want to have the same opportunity to express their pride. From what I garnered, a few speakers don't expect Cortland to be ready and want to see redistricting delayed. Some speakers from Lees Park don't think that Cortland can measure up to their expectations. And we've heard from a vocal minority, but not from the silent majority, who are expecting the school board to take care of business. There were multiple concerns that were expressed. I'll go through a few. The concern that the GPA and class size would be lowered. These statistics are calculated each year and are not the only measure of success. I doubt seriously that they will be lowered by participating in a different cohort when some of the same participants will be part of the same cohort. There is routine transition of students throughout the school year, so the GPA figures are calculated for that class as a cohort and will undoubtedly change. One does compete with oneself and is a comparison with all the others in the class. The other concern was that the renovation project at Cortland cannot be completed on time. I doubt this assertion, given the fact that the contractor has met his timetable at every benchmark for the last year and a half. The auditorium is scheduled for completion in October, but does not preclude the opening of the school on time. There was a concern about staffing and transportation, as was emphasized in 126 days, 4 months. This school division has been staffing schools with qualified employees every year. We have an HR staff which is bar none of the very best quality. And I have observed this operation for more than 30 years, and our staff can complete the task as we need to get my screen to move. Our HR staff is observant. As I've observed this operation for more than 30 years, our staff can complete the task as we've done for many years. More than 80 questions have been posted from the info sessions, and the answers are posted on the website. Concerning the electives and capstone program, the same curriculum exists for all 5 high schools. Same course offerings are available for all. How the students choose and sign up and which courses can have sufficient sign up will vary school by school. More students equals more possibilities, just what Ms. Graham said. However, all is contingent on having sufficient numbers for a class to make, just like in college, no different. It so happens that Massaponax and Riverbend chose the capstone program, and Cortland could do the same. And as a point of clarification, the master schedule for each high school has not been completed. It's done during the summer. There was concern over athletic facilities. It so happens that Cortland will be the first to have the artificial turf field and a renovated field house. There's concerns about this project has been rushed, and Mr. Upperco did share the timeline for communications which was sent out. We need to keep in mind that no time is a good time for redistricting because of change for parents and students, programs and schedules, and no one likes a change. It's like who moved my cheese. In the mind of parents, it may seem rushed because things got serious when the redistricting committee met in January following the guidelines established by the board and coming up with a specific action plan. We would all like to have received options earlier, but Mother Nature had something to say, and we lost several weeks in February. The staff and school board has been proactive in working on this for several years, and we heard the timeline of activities that Mr. Upperco reviewed this evening. Someone would say, why hasn't something been done since 2009? That assertion was made during the public hearing. Interesting that population figures have been up and down, but we want to go ahead with growth projections. And coming out of a recession is not the appropriate time to be asking voters for funding. A new high school may take approximately 4 to 5 years from inception to completion, and approximately $100 million. Done 3 of them, been involved in 3 of them. It is very, very extensive and a very costly proposition. But the board needs to first utilize available capacity in the high schools before we pursue a bond referendum. And some would say, why should something be done now? Why not postpone it for a year? What's to be accomplished, I ask, by kicking the can down the road a year from now? And we're in exactly the same place we are right now, but we'll have to repeat the process with revised numbers. What's going to be accomplished? I'd say nothing. We need to move on the redistricting decision, option 2, so that the board can move forward with the next step. And remember, we're going to have multiple steps after this. So we gain nothing by waiting. We as the board have been elected to make decisions, and I, for one, stand ready to cast my vote in favor of redistricting. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Meyer. Mr. Blaine.
Obviously, this is a difficult issue. We could talk for a long time, and there are nuances. You heard several of them here this evening, and there are many more that have not yet even been mentioned and could continue. But it's a type of situation that is made, that's the way it operates. You got all kinds of possibilities. There's not 100% agreement on any possible presentation that's actually made. We've had for the last several years very competent educators, community people in these discussions to figure out what is an acceptable plan. 100% agreement, I'm sure even if I had been in one of those meetings, every one of them would never have found a decision made 100%. That's just the way the nature is. Our educational system has many nuances within it, obviously, and we need to make a decision, and as it operates, adjustments are going to be made as we gather new information and have experience with it. The basic plan has been talked through that you've heard this evening. It's a plan that will work, and it has a plan that has detractors, and I think any one of us here could mention more than one detraction very easily. In my view, we've got a plan that has been put together very thoughtfully. It hasn't been arrived at by chance. We're on the verge now. If you drive around our community, there are buildings all over the place. And by acting now at this particular level, at the high school level, we can get some security, and the next step to address the kindergarten through 8th grade part of our educational system, because we've got the anchor. I think I would call this decision tonight an anchor for the decisions that will be made in the near future. And I think we're ready to move ahead on it. There's, again, I'll say there's obviously room for improvement, but we have a plan that will work. We've got the people who are willing to work at it. They've helped fashion it, and I find myself very ready to move ahead at tonight with the decisions as we're being asked to make it.
Thank you, Mr. Blaine. I first of all want to thank the staff for their preparation throughout not only just here recently, but in the past couple of years, and your work that you have engaged in so that we can make this decision at this time. And I think it's a very important decision that we have to make. I, first of all, before I engage into why I'm going to support this plan to redistrict, I want to commend all of my colleagues for their consideration in a very tough decision. They had to not only hear all the facts that were given by staff, they had to give consideration to their own constituents in their voting districts. And they have to also consider the well-being of all students throughout this county. And so I salute my colleagues for their decision, whether they vote for it or against it. I honor and respect them for their vote. I also want to say that the preponderance of the redistricting is actually going to occur in my district, in the Battlefield district in Lees Park. It's, I guess, the epicenter of everything that's redistricting this year that's happening. And I'm very comfortable letting others know that I supported this. And I know there's going to be some that are going to be disappointed in my vote, but I recognize that I'm not going to please everyone. I know that in order to have the legitimacy and moral leadership that's required to ask our citizens to possibly even consider in the future the building of a high school or another school, or to borrow money if that's required, we have to properly utilize the space that they've given us today. And to not properly utilize the space, to find it acceptable that one particular school is 100 and whatever percent over capacity so the others would not push near 100%, is unfathomable to me. I believe that all of our schools provide a quality education, and I also recognize that when you're talking about redistricting, you're better off jumping in a rattle pit bin and hanging out in there, because you're going to get bit. And I accept that, and I accept that it's not perfect, like Mr. Blaine said. So that's why we offered some package of mitigation with the option 2, so that we would be able to help absorb some of the pain on a large number of the students, but to prevent all students from feeling the effects of redistricting is almost impossible. The purpose of the redistricting was to reduce, the problem was always to reduce some of the overcrowding that's going on in Massaponax. To punt the ball down the field does not allow for us to glean any short-term or mid-term savings and capacity, because the area in which Massaponax serves is constantly growing. And so we have to alleviate some of the pressure now so that we can have an opportunity to look down the field and make some adjustments for redistricting that may come for middle school and elementary school. So I know it's a tough issue for all of us that are sitting here, but, and again, I'm not saying this to be cliche, that's why we got elected, to make tough decisions, and we should be able to stand for how we voted. And no matter how we voted, I have no doubt that every person on this dais right now gave honest consideration on what they believe what was in the best interest of not only their citizens in their voting district, but for all the students in Spotsylvania County. So that ends my comments. I want to offer anyone an opportunity to just add a clarifying comment, and please, I just ask, make it short, don't be too long. Mr. Twig.
One short closing comment. This is a difficult situation. I understand the burdens placed on all of our families, and especially our students, as they'll be making this transition and so quickly. I also understand the prevalent safety concerns and the dilemma for our teachers in the overcrowded classrooms at Massaponax High. This redistricting does have to happen at some point. Yet here we are once again on another situation where our administration did not communicate to neither our parents and especially not to our students in a timely manner. And I'm sorry to everybody within earshot that our administration did not give you, the people, what I would consider an appropriate amount of time to prepare for a transition of this magnitude. But yet, I am voting yes because I feel it is not safe to keep our Massaponax High School students and teachers in an overcrowded and in a compromising situation. Thank you.
Any other comments? Dr. Meyer.
I just want to thank the staff, because I know the Building Utilization Committee and the parents and principals who form the redistricting committee. Many thanks for the hours that they put in and considerations that they have given to this, because they're looking out for what's in the best interest of the school division as a whole. So thank you for, it's a thankless job, but thank you for the effort, all the communication, the preparation that you've given, and the information that you prepared for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others? Ms. Graham?
I just wanted to point out that with my option, we were not kicking the can down the road because we were approving the redistricting. And the other one is that it would lessen the Massaponics things, because I guess you guys have trouble breaking the 632 students up, but if you just assume there's a quarter of each of those numbers in each grade, half of those are juniors and seniors, they're not affected. A quarter of them would be freshmen, and they would move to where they're going to go, which is Cortland anyway. So the only numbers you would be losing were the potential sophomores that wouldn't want to relocate. The freshmen would move so that they can graduate from where they're going to go to for 4 years. So you would have the same exact change minus whatever your sophomore class, and if anyone couldn't arrange a ride. But it would be the same exact changes number-wise, except for allowing sophomores to basically decide whether they wanted to switch or not. So there wouldn't be a lot of kicking the can down the road as far as that goes. But as Barron said, I have between Berkeley District residents are a good third of the numbers that are affected here. So I have to, for some reason, like I said, those big neighborhoods I have with over 100 that are affected are mostly freshmen and sophomores, so I have to think about them.
I understand that, Ms. Grampa, and I honor your consideration, and that's why I made the comment that I did. I honor every person on this board's consideration for their vote, and whether they vote for it or against it I understand the tough decision that they made, and I'm actually honored that they are here to make that decision. Is there any other comments? Dr. Baker.
I just want to make a couple of comments, only because I know that the board is about to make a decision and a vote. And I feel like I have to for our staff. A comment was made, and at first I said, well, I don't need to comment. But as I've thought about it, a comment was made that once again, as in is a pattern that our administration does not communicate in a timely manner or in an effective manner. So I guess if that is a perception, then I would ask that the board and anyone else that's listening not blame the staff for that, just blame the superintendent. Because as far as I'm concerned, and I stood with my staff and my colleagues at information hearings 4 hours to directly address concerns that folks had, and knowing that in many cases there are no right answers. I want to thank them, and I mean everyone, including many community members who have been understanding about the complexity of this process. But I also want to remind the board that as we determined that we would tackle this particular project internally, that was a decision that I made, understanding that we have limited staff in doing this on our own, but we did. And in doing it, each step of the way, we brought to the board exactly where we were in the process. And on February the 25th, I believe the board knew that we were at a point that we would then begin to communicate with our families and our community, because we could not have communicated with any clarity when there were no options developed. I think obviously in hindsight, and as we go through processes, we would all like to do them earlier. I'd love to go back a couple of months ago and know that we had that, but that wasn't where we were. So on the 25th, if it was a concern that we were just going to be notifying folks that we were considering these options, then a decision could have been made to not engage our public in 4 information sessions that we prepared for and that we have continued to engage the public since then. But I do always strive to guide our staff in being better with communication each and every day. And I'm sure as we reflect on this particular process, we would always go back and say, well, maybe we could have done something better, something different. But when it was a wholesale generalization that, once again, I'll take that as superintendent, but I just want to make sure that folks do not defer that kind of generalized criticism on the entire staff that I have the pleasure and honor to work with. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Baker. And before we call for the vote, I want to echo your comments. I appreciate the fact that whatever goes right or wrong in this organization, you've always stood up to accept responsibility, and I admire you for that. Just like I want to own the vote that I take on this particular matter, and I'm not going to pass disparagement on staff or anyone else for the decision that I have to make. It is not my desire to ever take you out in front and throw you under the bus, and I just want you to know that. You and I have had some good lunches where they were good fighting lunches, but we honored each other by hearing each other out, and then at the same time leaving with a desire to work together. So I honor you and I appreciate what you just said, and I have great deal of respect for you, as I believe most of this board does. We'll call for the vote. I'm going to start, it's going to be a roll call vote. We'll start with Ms. Shelley.
Shelley, nay.
Shelley, nay. Dr. Meyer?
Aye.
Dr. Meyer votes aye. Mr. Twigg?
Aye, yes.
Mr. Twigg votes yes. Mr. Blaine?
Blaine, aye.
Blaine votes aye. Ms. Gramp?
Gramp, nay.
Gramp, nay. And the chair votes aye. The motion carries 4-2 with 2 dissenting votes, Ms. Gramp and Ms. Shelley, and 1 vote that was not present, Ms. Phelps. So the motion carries. Moving on to 16.01, unfinished business. Is there any unfinished business? Seeing none. Is there any new business? Okay, so let me start with Ms. Grant first, and then we'll go to Dr. Meyer.
Okay, so for new business, I'm going to start with my motion, and we can change it if we need to, but I move to get the RFP out for the third party to do the K through 8 redistricting as soon as possible so that we can get that third party hired, and I would request their results by December 1st to be presented to us so we have time to get the public hearings done and the vote done before middle school and elementary school orientations next year, since we're redistricting the whole county, and I assume we'll have a lot of public comment. So if we could get the RFP out as soon as possible and have a deadline December 1st from that third party, that would be my suggestion, and then I have some discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. Is there any
I'll second, but I have a question.
well, we got to second it first. So you want to second it first and then ask a question. So it's been properly moved and seconded. Go ahead.
You mentioned K-8. Reason for not K-12?
The current RFP, if you ask Mr. Upperco, is being designed for K-8. I thought during discussion we might want to entertain K-12, specify we're not going to undo what we just did for those high schools, but Riverbend hasn't been addressed. It is close to capacity, and you said Chancellor's pretty close to capacity, so they might even need to move a little more around since there's still capacity left at other schools.
Yes.
So we could change that. You could offer an amendment if you'd like.
And offer a friendly amendment to make it K-12.
So you're
not undoing anything that we just did, K-12 for the other targeted area.
Yes.
Okay, so the amendment is to include K-12, but only for the action that has not been addressed.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, the area that we have not addressed. Okay, so we have a motion, and it's been properly seconded. Any comments? Dr. Bacon?
So I want to make sure that, that I'm understanding both the intent of the motion and also what I want to reference in a little bit of deeper detail, what I believe the intention of an RFP is beyond, and again, I think the board may have some other decisions to make that could impact whatever, and I don't want to say an arbitrary deadline, but I think there seems to be the suggestion that the third-party vendor would primarily just be about redrawing boundary lines. I view initially the scope of work as perhaps being more complex and broader than that, because the intent of the third party is not to simply come in and we have an, I guess, an imminent redrawing of boundary lines to rezone elementary and middle. It's to come in and comprehensively not only look at our boundaries and our feeders, but also to look at based on growth patterns, and they can probably do that in a way that we're not capable of. We need to determine how we want to invest in our next capital improvement plan for both current renovations of existing facilities as well as potentially new facilities, from which ones we need to where we might want to look at locating new construction. To me, there's a range of potential for this vendor to be looking at that is not confined to just that. So I would just ask that if you're considering a December 1 date, to me it might be a minimum time frame to get a update on what that party has done. But until we come back with the RFP that says, here's what these folks are going to do, I would be hesitant to recommend that you make a specific deadline for that, if that makes any sense.
I had to make a motion so that we could talk about it.
Gotcha.
So, Dr. Meyer?
I think it would be more beneficial. I understand where Ms. Grampus going and Ms. Shelley, but we need to hear from staff who have been working on the analysis that they've done so far with the consultant to ask Dr. Baker to prepare a draft, what the draft RFP would look like in terms of its scope, and then that will help us and guide us down the road. Because I see also opportunities for more than just a high school, more than just elementary, more than just a middle. We've got career and tech.
A vocational
these other
center.
things that, you're right. And so, all those things play in my mind. And at the same time, I think, well, we have property in the southwest, but that's not the right location. We need something in the northeast or southeast or combination that, and you're trying to find 100 acres, that's a tall task. And you can find a pig in a poke, and it's not worth a darn, because I've seen them and they've been trying to sell it to us or give it to us. There's a whole lot of issues that we are not even aware of. We haven't even been down that road. I have been, and I just know that it's more complicated, much more complicated than any of us ever imagined. And so I think first, let's get the scope, work through that, and then once we hear that, then we can say yay, nay, or add or subtract. But let's hear from the staff, superintendent staff, and their people, what they view as the scope of where we should be going next, which will include a lot of what we talked about. But
So Chairman Braswell, I have a request.
Yes. Go ahead.
At the conclusion of budget season, which may be extended because you just never know how those things go, we need to schedule a work session for staff to discuss with the board a comprehensive vision in preparation for bond writing and capacity studies and boundaries. I was just suggesting that if we were going to have a third party suggest boundary changes for K through 8 or other for 12, that we had it earlier in the year so we had time to debate it before orientation started. So I request, I guess we should wait to plan a date in May, maybe?
Yeah, I was thinking maybe June. Why would you say September, sir?
Okay, what about the motion on the table?
Because let's let our staff assimilate all this data, give us the data, and then review the data, and then come together in a meeting. It's common sense to me.
No, it's not an issue of common sense, it's an issue of having an opportunity to get together to discuss
Our vision.
our vision, and so we have to give them guidance in order before we continue the process of developing courses of action. We're not talking about developing courses of action, we have to have a work session to talk vision. Now, that's just my opinion, Mr. Twigg. If you, hold on, please, I have the floor. It's an issue of discussion. If you have a disagreement, you disagree, but I think we can respectfully disagree that with the intent of the workshop would be, but I believe that in order to have courses of action developed, we have to also have an opportunity to have a vision that has been formulated by this board, and that requires that we have a conversation with one
All I'll
another.
respond to that is, if you just use the process that I stated, we can have that meeting, except that meeting, if we allow the process to play out, would be late summer, early fall.
Mr. Twigg, I think
So that's all I have to say. Thank
you. I heard your comments, Mr. Twigg, and I would be glad to have a conversation with you offline, and we can talk it through so that we don't have misunderstanding. Thank you. Is there any other comments on that, Dr. Meyer?
There was a motion and a second.
Okay. Yeah. So we have a motion on the floor, and it was properly seconded. Go ahead. Yes.
Anybody can table them.
You can table it if you made the motion.
So do you want to table the motion?
I'm going to withdraw the friendly amendment.
So you're going to withdraw the friendly amendment?
So now it's dead.
Say again?
So now it's dead.
So now it's dead, okay. So we don't have a motion on the table? All right. So any other comments, any other new business? Dr. Meyer?
I just want to point out that since I'm chairing a committee that's taking a look at the legislative positions that are in our VSBA legislative positions manual, if you're looking at this for nighttime reading and you find something that jumps out at you that you think that should be changed, we have until June to do this, but for all purposes, we need to present something in May, act on it as a board, and then present it. And then I'm going to be chairing the committee that's receiving any suggestions that will be forthcoming by June. The VSBA committee that I chair, we meet in July, present it to the VSBA Board of Directors in August, and then this board will have the delegate and the alternate to vote at the delegate assembly on any changes to this VSBA positions. But if you look through here and find anything that jumps out at you, that you think this should be changed, let me know. I'll coordinate then with Dennis to fill out the form, bring it back at our next board meeting in May. Hearing none, I'll just take what I get from the other divisions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Work session on next Monday, on the 15th at 5:30. 5:30. Any other comments? We have a motion to adjourn? Motion to adjourn by Ms. Shelley. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Twigg. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Means adjourned.